Welcome to Monk's Temple. Please, come in. Find a comfortable space, and allow yourself to settle. You are here because somewhere within you, a quiet longing has stirred, a longing for respite from the endless chatter, the looping worries, the future tripping and past regretting that so often clouds your inner sky. This feeling, this sensation of a mind that never rests, is as ancient as humanity itself. And the answers to it are just as ancient, yet eternally fresh. Today, we will not fight this noise. Instead, we will learn the art of listening through it, to the profound silence that lies beneath. This is the wisdom offered by the Buddha, not as a theory, but as a lived truth. So, let us begin not with a struggle, but with a simple, gentle inhale, and a slow, releasing exhale. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Feel the weight of your body being supported. Notice the sounds around you, not as interruptions, but as part of the tapestry of this moment. For now, there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. There is only this invitation to be present. Many believe that the path to peace is complicated, requiring special postures, secluded retreats, or profound intellectual understanding. But Buddhism, at its heart, points to a simplicity that is startling. It suggests that our suffering, including the agony of overthinking, arises from one fundamental error: we believe our thoughts are who we are. We believe the story the mind is telling. The Buddha's radical insight was that thoughts are mere events in consciousness, like clouds passing through the vast, open sky of your awareness. You are the sky, not the clouds. Yet, we spend our lives obsessing over the weather. Identifying with storms of anxiety, clinging to beautiful sunsets of pleasure, and fearing the dark clouds of sorrow. We build a home in the temporary, and then wonder why we feel so unstable. Let me share a story, an original parable from the halls of Monk's Temple, to illustrate this. Long ago, a traveler came upon a vast, deep canyon. As he stood at its edge, he felt a surge of loneliness and shouted into the abyss, "Who am I?" The canyon echoed back, "Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" The traveler, mistaking the echo for an answer, sat down, perplexed. He began a long, internal debate with the echo. Well, if I am, who am I, what does that mean? Is that my name? My purpose? He shouted other questions. What should I do? Am I good enough? Each time, the canyon faithfully echoed his own words back to him. For days, he lived at the edge, engaged in a frantic, confusing dialogue with his own reflected sound, growing increasingly weary and confused. A sage happened upon him. Seeing the man's distress, he picked up a small, smooth stone and dropped it into the canyon. They both listened to the long silence, then a distant, soft click as it hit the bottom. The sage said, "You have been talking to your own voice. The canyon does not answer, it only returns what you give it. Your mind is this canyon. Every anxious thought, every fearful question, is your own shout. The echoing, the looping, the overthinking. It is just your own energy, coming back to you. Stop shouting. Be still. And listen to the silence that holds the echo." The traveler sat quietly. For the first time, he stopped asking questions. In that stillness, he didn't find an answer in words. Instead, he found a profound sense of peace that had been there all along, underneath the noise of his own echoes. This is our first lesson. Your overthinking is not an attack from the outside. It is the echo of your own engagement with transient thoughts. The practice is to stop feeding the canyon with your shouts. To become still, and identify not with the echo, but with the deep, silent space that allows the echo to be heard. If this perspective, this first step towards quieting the internal echo chamber, feels like a relief, consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. By subscribing, you gently remind yourself to return to this space of stillness. You join a community seeking the same quiet, and you allow us to bring more of these lantern-lit stories into the dark. Your subscription is a simple, powerful nod to your own peace. Now, let us continue. In the Buddhist teachings, this silent, aware space is your true nature. The turmoil is what arises when you forget this. Think of it this way: imagine a crystal-clear mountain pool, perfectly still. This is your natural mind. Now, imagine stirring up the mud from the bottom with a stick. The water becomes cloudy, murky, impossible to see through. You are the one holding the stick. Every anxious thought, every rumination about the past, every catastrophic projection of the future, is a frantic stirring of that stick. You stir because you believe you must find something in the mud, an answer, a guarantee, a resolution. But the answer was never in the mud. It was in the clarity of the undisturbed water. The more you stir, the less you can see. The instruction is not to find a better way to stir, or to analyze the mud. It is to simply, let go of the stick. Allow the agitation to settle on its own. The pool knows how to become clear again. Your mind knows how to find peace. It is its natural state when you cease the constant interference of compulsive thinking. In a small village, there was a clockmaker renowned for fixing any timepiece. One day, a man brought him a precious, complex watch that had stopped. The clockmaker placed it on his velvet cloth and began his work. However, this time, he was preoccupied. His mind was tangled with worries about his finances, his health, an argument with a friend. As he tried to focus on the tiny gears, his thoughts kept intruding. What if I can't fix this? What will people say? My reputation. His hands, usually steady, began to tremble. He overanalyzed every component, second-guessing his knowledge. He took the watch apart and put it back together multiple times, each attempt more frantic than the last. After hours, the watch lay in more pieces than when it began, and the clockmaker sat in despair, exhausted by the mental storm that had prevented his skilled hands from doing their work. His young apprentice, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "Master, may I clean your tools?" The clockmaker, defeated, nodded. The apprentice slowly, methodically, wiped each tool and laid it in order. He then approached the bench. He did not think about reputation or fear. He simply looked at the pieces with calm curiosity. He saw a tiny speck of dust on a crucial gear that his master, in his mental frenzy, had overlooked 10 times. He gently blew it away. With steady, untroubled hands, he reassembled the watch in a single, fluid sequence. It began to tick perfectly. The master was astonished. "How did you do what I could not?" The apprentice replied, "You were trying to fix the watch with your worries, master. I only fixed it with my eyes and my hands. Your mind was in a different time. Mine was here with the watch." When we overthink, we are like the clockmaker trying to solve a problem with the very tool that is broken, the agitated mind. We try to fix a life situation while our awareness is clouded by fear, trapped in the past or future. The solution often appears not when we think harder, but when we become still enough to see the obvious speck of dust, the simple, present moment fact we've been overlooking. Clarity of perception is the most powerful tool, and it only exists in the now. Let's pause here. This is the foundation. You are not your thoughts. Peace is your nature when the stirring ceases. The work is in learning to put down the stick, to quiet the echo, to return your awareness from the turbulent time of worry to the steady, simple reality of the present. This is the core of the Buddha's way. Let us continue. Please, settle back in. Bring your attention gently to your breath, not to change it, but simply to notice its natural rhythm. In and out. With each exhale, imagine you are creating a little more space within yourself. A little more room for stillness to grow. We've touched on the idea that you are the silent awareness behind the thoughts. But the mind, in its habit, will protest. If I am not my thoughts, then what are they? Why are they so persistent? So painful? The Buddha provided a framework for understanding this, not to get lost in more analysis, but to foster a liberating detachment. He taught that thoughts, like all phenomena, are empty of a permanent, solid self. They are conditioned events. They arise based on causes. Past experiences, sensory inputs, habits. A thought of fear arises not because there is a you who is inherently fearful, but because a certain trigger activated an old neural pathway, a memory, a story. The thought itself is just a burst of mental energy. The suffering comes in the next moment, when you grasp it. You claim it. You think, this fear is mine. It is telling me something important about me or my world. You build a nest around it, and then you live in that nest of worry. Consider a new metaphor. Imagine your awareness is a vast, pristine, white wall. Your thoughts are like shadows cast upon it by objects passing in front of a light source. The shadow of a tree, of a bird, of a frightening shape. When you overthink, you are no longer seeing the wall. You are studying the shadows. You are trying to analyze their substance, their meaning, their intent. You become afraid of the shadow monster, even though it is just a temporary play of light and form. You might even build a whole identity. I am a person who is haunted by shadow monsters. But the wall itself, your aware presence, is untouched. It remains pure, white, and capable of holding any shadow without being stained by it. The practice is to shift your identity from the fleeting shadow to the enduring wall. There was a gardener who tended a beautiful plot of land. One morning, he found a strange, unfamiliar weed. He looked at it with concern. What is this? Is it dangerous? Will it spread? Did I do something wrong for this to appear? He spent the entire day reading gardening manuals, asking neighbors, worrying about the weed. He barely touched his other plants. The next day, the weed was still there. Now his thoughts grew darker. It's taking over. My garden is ruined. I am a failure as a gardener. He became so consumed by his internal drama about this one plant that he neglected watering, pruning, and enjoying the rest of his thriving garden. The weed, in reality, was a harmless, solitary plant. But in the gardener's mind, it had become a catastrophe. An old gardening master visited. Seeing the man's distress, he walked straight to the weed, bent down, and with a gentle, effortless tug, pulled it from the soil. He held it up. It is just a plant, he said. You gave it a home in your mind that was 1,000 times larger than its home in your soil. You nurtured your thought of it until it choked your peace. See? The garden is fine. You were the one who stopped tending the flowers. An overthinking mind does this. It finds a single weed, a comment from a coworker, a small mistake, a future possibility, and it transplants it from the soil of simple reality into the fertile, unlimited space of the imagination. There, it waters it with fear, fertilizes it with what-ifs, and lets it grow into a jungle that obscures the entire landscape of the present moment. The Buddhist practice is to see the thought for what it is, a mere weed in the field of awareness, and to choose, gently, not to water it. You can pull it out with non-engagement, or you can simply let it be, knowing it will wither without your obsessive attention. The garden of your life is elsewhere, in the present, tangible tasks and joys you are neglecting while you stare at the phantom weed. This is the essence of mindfulness, or sati in the Buddha's language. It is not about achieving a blank mind. It is about recognizing what is happening in the mind without becoming its accomplice. When the thought, "I am not good enough," arises, mindfulness is the silent note, that the not good enough story has appeared. That's all. You don't argue with it. You don't write a sequel to it. You just acknowledge its presence, as you would acknowledge a cloud passing the sun. This simple act of recognition creates a critical gap between you and the thought. In that gap, your freedom lies. I recall a time when this gap felt impossible to find. I was waiting for very important news, the kind that would determine the next chapter of my life. The period of waiting was an exquisite torture of overthinking. My mind had written every possible script, from glorious success to utter ruin. One afternoon, caught in yet another mental loop, I literally felt dizzy. In desperation, I went outside and sat on the earth. I put my palms flat on the grass. I forced my attention, with all my will, into my hands. I felt the blades of grass, some soft, some prickly. I felt the cool, damp soil beneath. I noticed tiny insects moving. I stayed there, my mind screaming its scenarios, but I kept my attention anchored in the sensation of my hands on the ground. It was a battle at first. But slowly, the screaming became a shouting, then a murmuring. The sensations in my hands became more vivid. The scent of the earth filled my nose. For moments at a time, I was just a person sitting on the ground. The news hadn't changed. The future was still unknown. But I was no longer exclusively trapped in the terrifying movie of my mind. I had found a seat in the sensory reality of the present. That seat was my salvation. It didn't solve my problem, but it gave me a place of sanity from which to meet whatever would come. This is the power of anchoring. Not to stop thoughts, but to give your awareness a stronger, more immediate object to rest upon than the chaotic thought stream. Let us breathe together again. For these few moments, let your anchor be the breath. Notice the cool air entering your nostrils, the slight pause, the warmer air leaving. No need to control. Just follow. If thoughts come, notice them, and gently return to the breath. The return is not a failure, it is the very practice of freedom. Pause for a few breaths. Good. Now, let's explore another story that illuminates the trap of overthinking from a different angle. Two travelers came to a wide, fast-flowing river they needed to cross. There was no bridge. The first traveler, a chronic overthinker, sat down on the bank. This is dangerous, he thought. The current looks strong. What is the exact depth? What is the temperature? Are there rocks underneath? What if I slip? What if my pack gets wet and ruins my supplies? Perhaps there is a safer crossing upstream. Or downstream. I should calculate the optimal point. He took out maps, made notes, weighed risks. He was so immersed in planning the perfect crossing that he didn't notice the changing light. He was still sitting there as dusk fell, then night, his mind racing, his body frozen. The second traveler stood for a moment, feeling the sun on her skin, listening to the river's sound. She assessed the visible crossing point directly in front of her. It seemed viable. She knew thinking wouldn't change the river. She adjusted her pack, found a sturdy walking stick for balance, and stepped into the water. The current was strong, the water cold. She had to move with focus, feeling for secure footing with each step, adapting to the push of the water. It was challenging and required her full, present moment attention. Halfway across, she even slipped briefly, but her stick and her calm reflexes kept her upright. She reached the other side, wet and energized, just as the sun began to set. She looked back and saw her companion, a tiny figure still sitting on the far bank, head in his hands. The river is life itself, constantly flowing, unpredictable. The need to cross is a challenge we all face. Overthinking is the illusion that we can somehow solve the river from the safety of the bank through analysis. It is a substitute for action, born from fear. But life can only be lived by stepping into the current, into the present moment, with attentive courage. You will get wet. You might slip. But you will be living, not just thinking about living. The Buddha's path is one of engaged presence, not detached analysis. Your thoughts about the river are not the river. Your experience of crossing, with all its immediacy, is the only truth that matters. This brings us to a cornerstone of the Buddha's teaching, impermanence, *anicca*. Every single component of your overthinking is impermanent. The worried thought arises, it stays for a time, and it passes. The feeling of anxiety peaks, and then it subsides. You are trying to nail down a river with a hammer. You are trying to make the temporary permanent, and that struggle is the source of your exhaustion. When you deeply understand that the thought is already on its way out the moment it arrives, it loses its grip. You can say to yourself, this too is changing. It is a mantra of liberation. You are not stuck with this feeling forever. It is a wave, and you are the ocean. The wave has a beginning and an end. The ocean simply is. We will explore this and other principles further, but for now, let this settle. You are the wall, not the shadow. You are the gardener, and you can choose not to water the weed of obsessive thought. You are the traveler, and the crossing is only made by stepping into the present moment river. Let us continue our journey into stillness. Find your posture once more, whether seated or lying down. Allow your eyes to softly close. Bring a gentle curiosity to the field of your own experience. What do you hear? What do you feel in the body, the pressure where it meets the chair or floor, the subtle dance of air on the skin? For a moment, just be the one who is aware. Not the one who is thinking about being aware. Just awareness itself. This is the ground of our practice. We've spoken of thoughts as clouds, as echoes, as shadows. But who is it that thinks? This is the question that leads to the heart of the Buddha's most profound revelation. the teaching of anatta, or non-self. We operate under a powerful illusion, that inside us resides a solid, unchanging thinker, a captain at the helm of the ship of the mind. We believe this I is the source of thoughts, the owner of feelings, the controller of actions. Buddhism gently inquires, can you find this I? If you search your direct experience right now, not through ideas but through sensation, where is this permanent self? Is it in the thoughts? But thoughts come and go, and you remain aware of them. Is it in the feelings? Feelings also arise and pass. Is it in the body? The body is constantly changing, a process rather than a thing. The I you believe yourself to be is itself a thought, a concept, a story woven from memory and perception. It is a useful convention, but not an ultimate reality. When you overthink, you are essentially a story arguing with itself, a character in a novel trying to write and critique the plot at the same time. It's exhausting because it's a fiction trying to control a fiction. Imagine a whirlpool in a river. The whirlpool has a distinct shape, a powerful force. It might even think, I am a permanent, separate entity. I must maintain my form. I must pull in this leaf. I must fight that current. But the whirlpool is nothing but the activity of the river itself. It has no independent existence. When the conditions change, the river's flow slows, the rocks shift, the whirlpool dissolves back into the river. You are like that whirlpool. The sense of me is a temporary pattern of energy, of thoughts, sensations, memories, arising within the vast, flowing river of awareness. Overthinking is the whirlpool's frantic effort to maintain its separate, solid identity, fighting the natural flow of life. Peace is realizing you are the river, not the temporary pattern. The river is not anxious about the whirlpool, it contains it. In a northern kingdom, there was a sculptor famed for his works in ice. He would create stunning, intricate palaces and dragons that glittered in the winter sun. He became deeply attached to his creations, especially one magnificent ice eagle. He would sit by it, thinking, this is my masterpiece. It must last. How can I protect it from the sun? From warm winds? What if it cracks? What if someone damages it? His days became a vigil of worry. He built a shelter, then fretted about the shelter's shadow ruining the view. He thought of moving it, then feared the move would break it. He was miserable, watching his beautiful eagle through a lens of impending loss. A wise elder from the village found him thus. The elder said nothing, but gestured for the sculptor to follow him to a nearby cliff overlooking the sea. They watched the waves crash against the rocks, the water exploding into a million sparkling droplets in the air, then falling back into the sea. They did this in silence for a long time. Finally, the elder spoke. You are trying to make the wave stay on the rock. Your eagle is a wave of winter. It is water, expressing itself as eagle for a time. You can either spend its brief, beautiful life fearing its return to water, or you can enjoy the miracle of its current form. The wave does not grieve when it returns to the ocean. It simply returns. The sculptor returned to his eagle. He saw it not as a fragile object he had to defend, but as a temporary, brilliant dance of frozen water. He felt his worry melt. He began to simply appreciate its beauty each day, knowing its nature was to change. When the thaw came, he watched it soften and drip with a sense of awe, not loss. It was all just water, changing form. Your self, the one you worry about, the one whose future you catastrophize, whose past you regret, this self is the ice eagle. It feels solid, precious, and under threat. Overthinking is the sculptor's desperate attempt to preserve what is inherently impermanent. The Buddha's wisdom invites you to see the waterness in everything, including your own sense of self. You are a flowing process, not a fixed statue. When you deeply know this, the pressure to figure everything out to protect this solid I begins to lift. You can engage with life without the desperate clinging that fuels the mental storm. This is not a cold or nihilistic idea. It is the gateway to true intimacy with life. When you stop trying to freeze the river, you can finally swim in it, feel its current, enjoy its coolness. You are freed from the exhausting job of being the permanent curator of a museum of your own life. Let me share a personal memory that speaks to this. Years ago, I was tasked with giving a major talk. The I that I believed myself to be, an anxious, self-conscious person, was terrified. For weeks, the overthinking was relentless. I'll forget my words. They'll see I'm a fraud. My voice will shake. I was that sculptor, trying to protect a very fragile ice statue of a competent speaker. The day arrived, and in the green room, the panic peaked. Then, something shifted. In sheer exhaustion, I stopped trying to hold myself together. I thought, fine. Let the anxious person fall apart. Let the voice shake. Let them see whatever they see. It wasn't defiance. It was a kind of surrender to the truth of impermanence. This state of fear would also pass. In that surrender, the tight knot of I loosened. When I walked on stage, I wasn't protecting a statue anymore. I was simply there, present with the audience, words arriving as they would. The talk wasn't perfect, but it was alive, connected, and real. The ice had melted, and what was left was just the flowing water of the experience itself. The fear hadn't been conquered, it had been seen through. Now, let's breathe into this understanding. For a few cycles of breath, don't think of yourself as a person breathing. Simply be aware of the phenomenon of breath happening. Sensations moving. Air flowing. No breather. Just breathing. Pause. Good. With this perspective, let's explore another story that reveals how overthinking often complicates what is simple. A man was sure he had left a precious family heirloom in his garden shed. He rushed to the shed and found the door locked. He searched his pockets, no key. A storm was gathering on the horizon. Panic set in. The heirloom will be ruined by damp. I must get in. He began to overthink. He ran to his workshop, found a crowbar, and tried to pry the sturdy lock. It wouldn't budge. He fetched a saw and tried to cut through the hasp. The metal was too strong. He considered breaking a window, but feared the glass would damage the interior. He was drenched in sweat, the storm clouds darkening, his mind a torrent of failed plans and escalating dread. His young daughter came out to see what the commotion was. She watched her father struggle for a moment. Then, she walked to the side of the shed where a climbing rose grew thick. She carefully pushed aside a branch, revealing a small, high window, always left slightly ajar for ventilation. She called out, "Papa, can you lift me up?" He stopped, stunned. He lifted her, she pushed the window fully open, wriggled through, and unlocked the door from the inside. The heirloom was safe with minutes to spare. The man had been so fixated on the problem of the locked door that his mind had narrowed to a single, forceful solution: break the lock. He never stepped back to observe the whole shed. His overthinking was a form of mental contraction, a panic that blinded him to the obvious. Our minds do this constantly. We face a challenge, a conflict, a decision, a fear, and we fixate on the most apparent lock. We push and pull with mental force, trying to solve it through sheer worry and analysis, growing more frantic as the storm of our anxiety gathers. Often, the solution exists not in attacking the lock, but in quietly surveying the entire situation with a calm, childlike openness. It requires stepping out of the frantic narrative and simply looking with fresh, quiet eyes. The Buddha's way is one of open, panoramic awareness, not narrow, forceful fixation. This is a practical application of the non-self insight. When the contracted, worried I is in charge, it sees only the lock. When that I relaxes its grip, a wider, wiser intelligence, the quiet awareness that you fundamentally are, can perceive the open window. You are not just the frantic man, you are also the space that contains the shed, the rose, the window, and the calm child. Access that space, and solutions often appear that were invisible to the troubled thinker. We are weaving together key threads: the emptiness of thoughts, the illusion of a solid self, the power of present moment awareness. These are not separate teachings, but different facets of the same diamond of truth. In our next part, we will explore how to actively cultivate this spacious awareness in daily life. But for now, rest in this knowing. The thinker you take yourself to be is a fleeting pattern. The awareness that knows the thinker is vast, silent, and already at peace. Let us settle even deeper now. As you find your place of rest, allow your attention to soften. There is no need to focus intently. Simply let your awareness be open, like a soft gaze resting on the room around you. Notice sounds, but let them come and go. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest. In this soft, receptive state, we turn from understanding the problem to cultivating the solution. The Buddha's path is not passive resignation, it is a purposeful cultivation of qualities that lead out of suffering and into freedom. One of the most direct paths is the cultivation of mindfulness and concentration, not as a task, but as a homecoming. We often believe peace must be manufactured. We search for it in future achievements, in changed circumstances, in the perfect mental state. But the Buddha pointed out that peace is a quality of the mind when it is free from craving and aversion. It is already here, obscured by our doing, our striving, our thinking. The practice, then, is a practice of undoing, of unhooking. It is like carefully disentangling a knotted necklace. You don't add more knots, you patiently loosen the existing ones with gentle, persistent attention. To do this, we need an anchor. The breath is the Buddha's most revered anchor. Why? Because it is always with you, it is neutral, and it is a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the body and the mind. When you place your attention on the breath, you are not just watching breath, you are training the mind to reside in the present sensory reality. You are teaching it to let go of the abstract, conceptual world of past and future where overthinking thrives. Each time you notice the mind has wandered into a thought and you gently return to the breath, you are performing a sacred act of liberation. You are saying to the mind, not that. This. Here. Now. You are weakening the habit of entanglement and strengthening the muscle of presence. A man went to a meditation master, frustrated. My mind is like a wild animal. It never stays still. I try to watch my breath, and immediately I'm planning dinner, replaying an argument, worrying about tomorrow. I am a failure at this. The master smiled and asked, "Do you have a new puppy?" The man, confused, said he did. "What do you do when you are house training the puppy?" the master asked. "Well, when it chews on the furniture, I gently pick it up and place it on the newspaper. Again and again. It might take 50 times. And do you get angry at the puppy each time?" "No," said the man. "It's just a puppy. It doesn't know better. I just keep patiently putting it back where it needs to be." The master nodded. Your mind is that puppy. It has been chewing on the furniture of past and future for a lifetime. It doesn't know another way. Your job is not to get angry, not to declare yourself a failure. Your job is to be the kind, patient owner. Every time you notice it has wandered off into thought, gently, without judgment, pick it up and place it back on the newspaper of the breath. Do it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. That is the training. The puppy will learn. And so will your mind. This story reframes the entire practice. The frustration of a wandering mind is not an obstacle, it is the very material of the training. Each awareness of wandering, followed by a gentle return, is a successful repetition, not a failure. You are building a new neural pathway of patience and gentle stewardship of your own awareness. The goal is not a perfectly still puppy, but a patient, compassionate trainer. Now, let's expand this beyond the cushion. The Buddha's mindfulness is meant to permeate life. This is where the concept of meditation in action becomes vital. You can make any activity your breath, your anchor. The monk grinding rice in the old story achieved enlightenment not in seated silence, but in the total absorption of his daily task. This is a profound secret. You don't need to escape your life to find peace, you need to fully enter it. In a village, there were 2 blacksmiths. The first was known for his grumbling. He saw his work as a means to an end. I must heat the metal, strike it, cool it, all to earn coins to buy bread. His mind was always elsewhere, on his debts, on his sore muscles, on the customer who annoyed him last week. The fire of his forge was just a tool, and the clang of his hammer was a noise he endured. He was perpetually irritable and tired. The second blacksmith approached his work differently. He would begin his day by feeling the weight of the hammer in his hand. He would listen to the specific sound of the bellows pulling air, watching the coal catch and glow. When he struck the hot iron, his entire being was in the strike, the arc of his arm, the meeting of metal, the resulting ring that vibrated in the air. He noticed the changing colors of the steel as it heated and cooled. For him, the rhythm of the bellows was his breath. The strike of the hammer was his heartbeat. He wasn't making a tool to sell. He was in a dynamic, present moment dance with fire and iron. He left his forge each day energized and at peace. Both men performed the same actions. One was lost in thought, separating himself from his experience. The other was united with it. The second blacksmith was practicing profound mindfulness. His work was his meditation. This is accessible to you. Whether you are washing dishes, typing on a keyboard, walking to your car, you can bring the whole of your attention to the sensations. The feel of warm water, the click of the keys, the rhythm of your steps. When you do, the thinking mind, having no unresolved business to pull you away, naturally quietens. The activity itself becomes a sanctuary. I have tried to bring this into the simplest of tasks. When drinking tea, I sometimes make it a ceremony of presence. I feel the warmth of the cup. I watch the steam rise in delicate curls. I smell the aroma. I feel the liquid's temperature and taste on my tongue. For those 2 minutes, there is no world but the tea. The mind, given this rich sensory world to inhabit, stops its chatter. It is a miniature vacation from overthinking. These small islands of pure presence throughout the day become oases that slowly change the climate of your entire mind. Let's practice this now, briefly. If you have a cup nearby, you can pick it up. If not, simply imagine one. Feel its weight, its texture. Imagine the warmth. Bring it slowly to your lips. Imagine the scent. Now, take a slow, intentional sip. Be completely with the experience of drinking. Let it be the most important thing in the universe for these seconds. Pause. This is the essence. You have just created a space without overthinking. To strengthen this ability, we also engage in formal concentration practice. This is like going to the gym to build strength you then use in daily life. Sitting quietly, focusing on the breath or a mantra, is training for the mind to become a more capable servant of presence. It teaches you the feel of a collected, unified mind, as opposed to a scattered, fragmented one. The Buddha called this samadhi, a mind that is collected, calm, and luminous. From this calm, wisdom, *panna*, naturally arises. You see things clearly, without the distortion of fear or desire. A woman was troubled by her mind's constant agitation. She went to a teacher who lived by a pond. "My thoughts are so muddy, I can't see anything clearly," she said. The teacher gave her a simple, wide, shallow bowl. "Go to the pond, fill this bowl with water from the very edge where your footsteps have stirred up the mud. Then set it down on this flat rock and sit beside it." She did as instructed. The water in the bowl was cloudy and brown. "Now," said the teacher, "just watch the bowl. Do not touch it. Do not add to it. Do not take from it." She sat. For a long time, nothing seemed to happen. She grew impatient. But she kept watching. Slowly, she noticed the larger particles of silt begin to sink to the bottom. Then the finer ones. The water in the upper part of the bowl became clearer and clearer. After an hour, the water was almost entirely clear, with all the sediment settled in a neat layer at the bottom. "The nature of water is to be clear," said the teacher. "The mud is temporary, stirred up by movement. Your mind is this water. Your thoughts are the stirred sediment. All you must do is stop stirring. Sit in stillness, and observe without interference. Clarity is not something you create. It is what remains when you cease to agitate. Formal meditation is the act of setting down the bowl of your awareness and committing to not stirring it. You watch the thought sediment settle, not by fighting them, but by no longer adding energy to them. You discover that underneath the temporary cloudiness is a natural, radiant clarity that has been there all along. This clarity is your true mind. Overthinking is just the stirred-up mud. We have now laid out the map, understand the emptiness of thoughts and the illusion of self, then cultivate the alternative through mindful presence and concentration. In the next part, we will explore how to work directly with the difficult emotions that fuel overthinking, fear, worry, and anxiety. Using the tools of compassion and wisdom. But for now, rest in the simplicity of being the patient trainer of the puppy mind, or the still observer of the settling bowl. The practice is gentle, persistent, and rooted in kindness. Let us continue, settling into a space of compassionate inquiry. Place a hand gently on your heart, if it feels comfortable. Feel the steady rhythm beneath your palm. This is the home of the feelings that so often fuel the whirlwind of thought. We have learned to see thoughts as clouds and to anchor in present moment awareness. But what of the storms themselves, the anxiety that tightens the chest, the fear that grips the throat, the sadness that feels like a weight? The Buddha's path does not ask us to bypass these. It offers a revolutionary way to meet them, with a heart of compassion and the clear eyes of wisdom. This is how we dissolve the fuel of overthinking at its source. Overthinking is rarely an intellectual exercise. It is almost always an emotional reaction wearing the mask of thought. A pang of fear about a health symptom spirals into hours of internet searching and catastrophic forecasting. A flash of insecurity after a social interaction becomes a night-long replay, analyzing every word. We are trying to think our way out of a feeling. But a feeling cannot be solved by thought. It can only be met, felt, and understood. When we try to escape a difficult emotion through relentless thinking, we are like a person trying to put out a fire by fanning the flames. The thinking is the fanning. The Buddha taught that at the root of these difficult emotions are two primary forces, craving, *tanha*, the desire for things to be other than they are, and aversion, *dosa*, the desire to push away what is unpleasant. Fear is aversion to an imagined future. Regret is craving for a different past. Worry is a tangled knot of both. Your overthinking mind is, in essence, a committee of craving and aversion, arguing and planning how to get a better feeling or avoid a worse one. The way out is not to win the argument, but to step out of the committee room entirely and meet the underlying feeling with a new kind of attention. Imagine a frightened child who has woken from a nightmare. The child is crying, trembling. One approach is to stand at the door and lecture the child, "There's no monster. Your fear is irrational. Look at the statistical unlikelihood of a monster under the bed. Now, go back to sleep." This is what we do when we try to rationally argue with our anxiety. It doesn't work. The other approach is to go sit on the bed, put an arm around the child, and simply hold them. You don't need to convince them the monster isn't real in that moment. You provide safety, warmth, and presence. "I'm here. It's okay. You're safe." Slowly, the child's nervous system regulates. The fear subsides because it has been met with connection, not logic. Your difficult emotions are that frightened child. They are part of your experience, crying out for attention. Mindfulness is the act of going to sit with them. Instead of arguing with the feeling of anxiety, I shouldn't be anxious, what's wrong with me, you turn towards it with gentle curiosity. You feel where it resides in the body, a tightness in the solar plexus, a constriction in the throat. You breathe into that space. You offer it the silent, inner whisper, it's okay. I'm here. This is allowed. This is not indulging the story behind the feeling, it is offering compassionate containment to the raw sensation itself. This is called radical acceptance. In the space created by this acceptance, the emotion often loses its urgency. It feels seen, and so it begins to soften and change. In a mountain pass, there was a small, warm inn. The innkeeper had a unique policy, he turned no one away. Thieves, kings, beggars, soldiers, all were welcomed, given a seat by the fire, and offered a simple bowl of broth. He didn't interrogate them about their past or their plans. He didn't try to reform the thief or flatter the king. He simply provided a space of non-judgmental hospitality. One fierce, blizzardy night, a terrifying figure arrived, a wild-looking man known throughout the region as a violent bandit, wanted by many. He stood in the doorway, dripping snow, his eyes glaring. The other guests shrank back in fear. The innkeeper simply looked at him and said, "Come in. You must be cold. There is a place for you here." He pointed to an empty chair by the hearth. The bandit, disarmed by this unresisting welcome, shuffled in. He sat, accepted the broth, and stared into the flames. No one spoke to him. He was just another guest. As the night wore on, the warmth and the quiet acceptance worked on him. The defiant hunch of his shoulders relaxed. By morning, he had left without a word, but later, tales spread that the bandit had abandoned his old ways and become a woodcutter in a distant forest. Your difficult emotions, rage, fear, shame, are like that bandit. They arrive at the door of your awareness, fierce and threatening. Your habitual reaction is to try to slam the door, suppression, or to fight them off, resistance. This only makes them bang louder. Overthinking is the fearful gossip among the other guests about the bandit. The practice of compassionate mindfulness is to be the innkeeper. You open the door. You acknowledge the guest. Ah, anger is here. Welcome. You give it a seat by the fire of your awareness. You don't feed it more stories. You just let it sit in the warmth of your non-judgmental attention. You offer it the broth of your breath. Seen in this way, without opposition, the emotion's energy begins to transform. It is allowed to be, and in being allowed, it completes its natural cycle and departs. Let me share a time I tried to be the innkeeper. I was in the grip of a profound sense of inadequacy, a feeling that I was failing at something important. My mind was a torrent of self-criticism and bleak predictions. One afternoon, exhausted, I remembered the innkeeper. Instead of following the thoughts, I said to the feeling, "Okay. You're here. Show me where you are." I felt it as a heavy, hollow ache in my chest. I placed my hand there. I breathed into that hollow space, not to make it go away, but just to keep it company. I whispered internally, "This is pain. It's okay. I'm here with you." I did this for maybe 5 minutes. The story didn't stop immediately, but the sharp, painful edge of the feeling blunted. It was as if the emotion, having been truly acknowledged, sighed and unclenched a little. The compulsive thinking lost its frantic energy. I was no longer at war. I was simply present with an experience of pain, and in that presence, I found a dignity and stillness that no amount of positive thinking had ever provided. This is the application of metta, loving kindness, towards oneself. It is the foundation for dealing with the inner turmoil that causes overthinking. You cannot hate yourself into a state of peace. You cannot scare yourself into being calm. You can only care yourself into healing. Now, let's breathe into this. On your next inhale, imagine breathing in compassion for any part of you that feels anxious or hurt. On the exhale, imagine sending a wave of gentle acceptance to that very part. Pause for a few breaths. With this foundation of self-compassion, we can look at the stories our minds create with the eye of wisdom. This is where we apply the Buddha's teaching on right view. We learn to question the reality of our anxious narratives. A boy was afraid to go into his attic. He was convinced a terrible beast lived there. Every creak of the house at night was proof. He lay in bed, thinking about the beast's claws, its teeth, its glowing eyes. He imagined all the horrible things it might do. His fear was real, his thoughts vivid. One day, his father, seeing his terror, took him by the hand and said, "Let's go meet the beast." Trembling, the boy followed. The attic was dim, crowded with old trunks and draped furniture. In the corner, the boy saw a looming, shapeless form with what looked like horns. He gasped. His father walked over, pulled a cord, and a dusty window shade flew up with a whoosh. Sunlight flooded in. The beast was revealed to be an old coat rack with a winter coat and a discarded hat hanging on it, casting a distorted shadow. The boy laughed with relief. The beast had never existed outside the dark and his imagination. Our worries are the shadow beasts. The mind, in the dim light of uncertainty, takes ordinary, neutral facts, a missed call from the boss, a strange physical sensation, a neutral comment, and drapes them with the coats and hats of our past traumas and future fears, creating monstrous shapes on the wall of our minds. Overthinking is the act of lying in bed, elaborating on the monster's mythology. Wisdom is the courage to turn on the light of inquiry. Is this true? What is the actual evidence right now? Am I confusing a thought with a fact? Very often, when you bring the clear, kind light of present moment awareness to the worry, it shrinks back into the coat rack of mundane reality. The feeling of fear may linger for a bit, like the adrenaline after a scare, but the story that fueled it is seen through. We are learning to meet the feeling with compassion and the story with discernment. This twofold approach starves the engine of overthinking. The emotion is soothed, and the narrative is disbelieved. What is left is the simple, workable reality of the present, which you can meet with the calm resourcefulness you've been cultivating. Welcome back. Let us now widen the circle of our awareness. Feel your body in space, anchored and present. Now, gently expand that sense of presence to include the room around you, the space beyond the walls, and the subtle web of connections that ties you to all of life. We have practiced turning inward, meeting our thoughts and feelings with compassion and clarity. But we do not live in a vacuum. Overthinking often flares in the friction of relationships, in the demands of work, in the noise of the world. The Buddha's wisdom is not a retreat from life, but a way to engage with it so skillfully that peace becomes your operating system, regardless of the external weather. The core insight here is interdependence. Nothing exists in isolation. Your mood affects your thoughts, which affect your speech, which affects another's mood, and so on in an endless, flowing dance. When you are caught in overthinking, you have contracted into a painful illusion of separation. You feel like a solitary node of worry, battling against external forces. The practice is to remember your connectedness. This shifts the energy from me against the world to me as part of the whole, which is a far less anxious, more spacious place to reside. Think of a single instrument in an orchestra. If the violinist is overthinking, is my pitch perfect? Am I too loud? What do the others think of me? The playing becomes tense, jarring, out of sync. The musician is trapped in a separate, fearful story. But when the violinist listens to the whole symphony, the swell of the cellos, the breath of the flutes, the rhythm of the percussion, and tunes into that harmonious whole, individual anxiety melts into collective flow. The note is played not from a place of isolated perfectionism, but from a place of contributing to something beautiful and larger. Your life is that symphony. Your overthinking is the isolated, fearful instrument. Mindfulness is the practice of listening to the whole piece. A wise queen was presented with a magnificent gift, a net that stretched to the horizons. At every intersection of the net was a brilliant, polished jewel. Each jewel reflected not only the light, but every other jewel in the entire net. A single jewel held the reflection of all others, and all others were reflected in that one. The queen would often take visitors to see it. She would point to a single jewel and say, "See this one. If you truly understand this jewel, how it holds the whole net within it, you understand the nature of reality. Nothing is alone. To care for this one is to care for the net. To harm this one is to harm the whole." When you overthink, you are staring at a single jewel, your own worried self, and seeing only its apparent flaws, its isolated fears. You forget that this jewel is reflecting the stress of your coworker, the expectations of your culture, the memory of your past, the hope for your future. You are not a separate worry machine, you are a responsive, reflective point in a vast, living network. This understanding breeds compassion, both for yourself and for others who are also caught in their own nodal points of suffering. It also offers a practical tool. When you feel overwhelmed by your own thoughts, shift your focus from the content of your worry to the connectedness from which it arises. Ask, what else is being reflected here? What needs care in the wider net? This can move you from helpless rumination into compassionate action or a simple, relieving sense of belonging. Let's bring this into the realm of daily interaction, where so much of our mental turbulence is generated. In 2 neighboring villages, the chiefs communicated by messenger. In the first village, the chief was suspicious and anxious. When a messenger arrived from the other village, the chief would immediately interrogate him, "Why did you come at this hour? What is hidden in your tone? Is this a trick?" He would then pace his tent, overanalyzing every word, imagining hostile intentions, and sending back fearful, defensive replies. The relationship between the villages grew tense and fraught with misunderstanding. In the second village, the chief was calm and present. When a messenger arrived, he would first offer him water and a place to rest. He would listen to the message fully, observing the messenger's demeanor but not jumping to conclusions. He would then pause, feel the truth of the situation in his body, and respond from a place of clarity and consideration for the whole relationship between the villages. His replies were often simple, direct, and de-escalating. Your mind is the chief. Every external event, a comment, an email, a look, is a messenger. Overthinking is the act of the anxious chief. Interrogating the messenger, dissecting the tone, projecting motives, and spiraling into defensive narratives before a clear understanding is ever reached. Mindfulness is the practice of the calm chief, receiving the message fully, pausing to feel your own embodied response, and only then choosing an action, or non-action, from a centered place. You respond to life, rather than react from a stockpile of fears. I learned this the hard way in an old workplace. I received a terse email from a superior. My anxious chief immediately took over. She hates my work. I'm going to be fired. What did I do wrong? I spent an evening in misery, drafting and redrafting defensive replies in my head. The next day, from a slightly calmer state, I simply walked to her office and said, "I got your note. I wanted to make sure I understood what you needed." It turned out she was under immense pressure from her boss and had fired off the email in a moment of stress. The message was about urgency, not disapproval. My entire night of suffering had been a reaction to a story I'd written, not the reality of the situation. I had been the interrogating chief, creating an enemy where there was none. This is where the Buddhist concept of right speech becomes a vital tool against overthinking. Right speech is not just about what you say aloud, it's about the internal dialogue you have about others and situations. The gossip, the judgment, the speculation. This is the fuel for interpersonal anxiety. When you commit to cultivating kind, truthful, and necessary internal speech, you starve the drama that feeds overthinking. You see the other person as another jewel in the net, subject to their own pains and pressures. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat, it means seeing clearly, so your responses can be wise rather than reactive. Now, let's apply this to a common trigger. The feeling of being overwhelmed by responsibilities, a prime breeding ground for frantic, scattered thinking. A man stood at the top of a thunderous, cascading waterfall. He was tasked with carrying all its water, one bucket at a time, to a distant field. He looked at the endless, crashing flow and thought, "It's impossible. I'll never keep up. It's too much. I'll fail." He froze in panic, his mind a torrent matching the waterfall. An elder pointed downstream. There, below the falls, was a large, deep, calm pool. The waterfall crashed into it with tremendous force, but the pool absorbed it all without turmoil. From the calm edge of this pool, a single, steady stream flowed toward the field. "You are trying to carry the waterfall," said the elder. "Your mind is at the top, where the chaos is. Go downstream. Be the pool. Let all the demands, the tasks, the inputs crash into the spaciousness of your awareness. They will be absorbed and transformed. Then, from the calm center, let your action flow out, one steady stream, one task at a time. You are not the waterfall. You are the pool that can hold it. When you feel overwhelmed, your awareness has climbed to the top of the waterfall, the point of input and chaos. The practice is to consciously move it downstream, into the pool of your centered being. Take a deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground. From that calm pool, look at the list. The waterfall of demands is still there, but you are no longer trying to catch each drop midair. You are the space that receives them. Then, you choose one thing. You become the single, steady stream of attention on that one task. This is mindful action. It is the antithesis of frantic, multitasking worry. Let's practice this now. Think of one small thing you need to do later today. Not the whole list. Just one thing. Now, for a moment, imagine doing that one thing with your full, calm, pool-like attention. See yourself engaged in it, peacefully. Feel the difference in your body between that image and the feeling of being at the top of the waterfall. Pause. This is the shift you can make, moment to moment. We are weaving a comprehensive way of being. Meeting inner experience with compassion, seeing through false narratives, remembering our interconnectedness, and engaging with the world from a calm center. This is the Buddha's Eightfold Path in action, not as a doctrine, but as a lived art. In our final sections, we will integrate these threads and offer stories for the journey ahead. But for now, rest as the pool. You are not the crashing water. You are the deep, still capacity that holds it all. Let us settle into deep listening now. No new lessons await, only the quiet integration of all we have learned. Feel your awareness soften, like morning light dissolving night's edges. In this space, we move from learning to being. Wisdom must move from mind into marrow, from concept into breath, from effort into ease. This is embodied peace, the lived reality beneath all thought. The Buddha's final teaching was not a philosophy but a release, a letting go into what you already are. You have lived as the thinker, the worrier, the solver. What if you are not the thinker at all? What if you are the awareness in which thinking happens? Shifting from identifying with thought to resting as awareness ends the search. You were never lost, only looking in the wrong direction. Picture a cinema. You are lost in a thrilling film, heart racing. That is overthinking, total absorption in the mental movie. Now recall you are in a cinema. Feel the seat, see the exit sign, hear the projector. The movie plays, but you are no longer lost in it. You are the watcher in a safe room. This is mindfulness. But one step remains. See that light projects images onto a screen. Without the screen, no movie exists. Your awareness is that screen, silent, vast, untouched by the dramas playing upon it. The screen is not scared by horror nor saddened by tragedy. It holds all stories equally, unchanged. You are that screen. Thoughts are light and shadow. Emotions are color and sound. They appear. You are the space allowing their appearance and disappearance. This felt knowing is integration. Let a story illuminate this shift from struggle to effortless being. A man was swept down a powerful river toward rapids. He fought the current, thrashing to swim upstream. He grew exhausted, terrified, certain of drowning. As his strength failed, his foot brushed the riverbed. The water was only waist deep. He had fought a current he could have stood in. Planting his feet on the stones, he stood. The current still flowed around him, but it could no longer sweep him away. He was steady. He could now look around and walk calmly to shore. We are that swimmer. The river is the stream of thoughts and life. Overthinking is the desperate thrashing, trying to think our way back to safety or forward to control. We believe we are in deep, dangerous water. Mindfulness helps us stop thrashing. Embodied wisdom is the moment our feet touch bottom, the direct knowing of our true ground. That ground is the unwavering awareness present all along beneath thought's turbulence. When you touch this ground, you stand in the mental current without being carried away. Thoughts still flow, but you are no longer at their mercy. You are rooted in deeper reality. This grounding is a habit of gentle return. How do we cultivate it? We anchor not in concepts, but in the silent presence prior to thought. In distress, ask, what is aware of this? Not who, but what. Don't answer with thought. Feel into the question. Feel the space behind your eyes, the stillness around your heartbeat, the aware emptiness reading these words. That is your ground. Or pause and feel the entire field of sensation in your body at once. Don't label. Just feel the aliveness as a single, whole experience. In that totality, the separate me dissolves into the larger field of being. I recall a moment this shifted from theory to flesh. During intense conflict, my old pattern was to construct defensive arguments, to win the mental battle. But that day, mid-breath, something gave way. Instead of following defensive thoughts, I dropped awareness into my body. I felt the heat in my face, the tight jaw. And behind that, a vast, cool stillness at my core. It was like stepping back into a deep alcove within. From that alcove, I watched the conflict unfold. I heard words, felt reactions arise and fall, but I was no longer on the battlefield. I was in the fortress of my own aware presence. My responses came slower, quieter, carrying a weight of truth mere cleverness never could. The dynamic changed not because I won, but because I ceased to be a combatant. I had found the riverbed. Let us deepen this with final stories. Each is a doorway into the same silent room. An apprentice potter obsessed over creating a perfect vase. Centering clay, his mind centered on failure. What if it collapses? Will the master approve? His hands, guided by tense thinking, pressed too hard. Vase after vase was misshapen. The master watched, then said, "Your hands do not need your thinking to shape clay. They have wisdom older than your fears." He blindfolded the apprentice. Do not make a vase. Just feel the clay. Feel its coolness, resistance. Let your hands listen to what the clay wants to become. Blindfolded and freed from judgment, the apprentice began. His hands, unattended by commentary, remembered their innate intelligence. They felt subtle signals, responding with firm yet yielding pressure. When the blindfold was removed, before him sat his most symmetrical, graceful vase. Your mind trying to control life is the sighted, anxious apprentice. Your deeper being is the blindfolded, feeling hands. Overthinking is the constant critique that ruins the form. Embodied wisdom is putting on the blindfold of pure sensory presence, dropping the story to feel the immediate, tactile truth of the moment. Life shapes itself beautifully when you get thinking out of the way and trust the older intelligence of aware presence. An ancient temple held two eternal lamps. The first had a flame dancing wildly, casting frenetic, racing shadows. Visitors watched, captivated by the exciting light show, discussing shadow shapes, feeling anxious or exhilarated. The second lamp held a flame burning with such steady intensity it appeared still. It gave constant, unwavering, golden light, filling its chamber with serene illumination. Here, everything was visible exactly as it was, no dramatic shadows. Visitors here often sat in silence, breathing deeply, feeling clarity and calm. Both lamps were fed by the same sacred oil. The difference was not the fuel, but the wick and vessel steadying the flame. Your consciousness is the sacred oil, pure awareness. Your untrained mind is the first lamp, the wick of attention loose, the vessel of practice unsteady. The flame of your awareness dances to every wind of thought, creating a chaotic inner world of shadow and drama. Meditation and mindfulness are the craftsman's work, trimming the wick, stabilizing the vessel. The goal is not to extinguish the flame, but to let it burn steadily, like the second lamp. Then, your innate light illuminates your inner world with clarity, not drama. You see things as they are, not as flickering shadows distort them. Your true nature hasn't changed. Only the quality of light has shifted from chaotic to clear. A seeker arrived at the fabled city of peace, surrounded by a high wall with a single gate. A fierce gatekeeper stood before it. The seeker recited all he had done to deserve entry, his meditation years, his philosophies, his good deeds. The gatekeeper listened impassively. The seeker then confessed all his flaws and failures. The gatekeeper's expression did not change. Finally, the seeker fell silent, spent. All concepts dropped away. He simply stood, empty, with no presentation to make. He looked at the gatekeeper and really saw him, not as an obstacle, but as another being. He offered a faint, weary smile of recognition. The gatekeeper smiled back, stepped aside, and gestured for him to enter. As he passed, the gatekeeper said softly, "I could only open the gate for the one you are when you stop trying to be someone. Welcome home. The city of peace is your true nature. The gatekeeper is your own judgmental mind, seeming to stand between you and peace. You try to think your way in, with spiritual achievements or self-criticism. Both are overthinking, trying to be a someone who deserves entry. The gate opens only when thinking ceases, when you arrive not as a seeker with a resume, but as aware presence, humble, empty, real. The smile of recognition is realizing the gatekeeper, your own mind, is not the enemy, but a part of the whole waiting for you to see through it. Integrate these stories. Be the swimmer finding the riverbed. Be the blindfolded potter whose hands know. Be the steady lamp. Be the seeker who stops seeking at the gate. This is not doing, it is undoing. It is relaxing into the truth waiting beneath all effort. Let us arrive now, fully, in this moment of completion. There is nowhere else to go, nothing more to seek. Allow your awareness to rest, like a leaf settling onto still water. No effort is needed. No concepts to hold. Simply be here, breathing, feeling the quiet truth that has been with you all along. Peace is not something to find, but something to remember. Overthinking is a forgetting, a temporary wandering from the home of your own aware presence. Every story, every breath, has been a gentle guide back to this hearth within. The Buddha's most compassionate teaching is that freedom is already here, woven into the fabric of your being. It is not a distant state reserved for saints or hermits. It is the natural condition of mind when it is no longer tangled in its own stories. You have always possessed the keys, your attention, your breath, your capacity to gently redirect, to offer kindness, to pause. These are not complex skills. They are the simple, sacred gestures of a consciousness remembering itself. As we close, I offer you a final story, a lantern to carry into the rhythm of your days. In a town lit only by moon and lamp, a watchman walked the night streets. His duty was to guard the peace, a lantern in his hand. But he was a troubled man. As he walked, his mind raced. Did I lock the gate? Is that a thief's shadow? What if fire breaks out? His anxiety shook his hand, making the lantern swing wildly. The dancing light cast leaping, monstrous shapes on the walls around him. The more he feared, the more he shook the light, and the more terrifying the shadows became. His nights were a torment of his own making. One night, in a peak of panic, he stumbled. The lantern rolled from his grasp and came to rest upright on the stones. Breathless, he watched. The lantern now sat still. Its flame burned steady, casting a calm, wide circle of light. Within that circle, everything was clear: cobblestones, a fallen leaf, a patch of moss, all just as they were, peaceful and precise. Shadows existed at the circle's edge, but they were still, held within the greater context of light. They held no terror. The watchman sat up, understanding dawning. His task was not to chase shadows with a frantic light. His task was to keep the lantern steady. When the light was steady, his path was clear. He could see what truly needed care. For the rest of his watch, he walked slowly, carefully, keeping the lantern still before him. He found a deep peace in that simple, steady glow. The town was as safe as ever, but he was no longer afraid. You are the watchman. Your awareness is the lantern. Your life is the town. Overthinking is the frantic swinging. The agitated mind creating moving monsters from still facts. Your practice is not to fight shadows or light every dark corner at once. It is to steady the lantern. To cultivate a calm, unwavering attention. When awareness is steady, life is seen clearly in its light. Challenges may wait at the edge, but they are seen in proportion, stripped of the horror your own movement adds. You walk your path with dignity, not panic. So how do you live this? You begin, and begin again, with microscopic fidelity to the now. When you wake, feel the sheets. Hear the first sounds. Steady the lantern. When anxiety arises, feel its location. Breathe into that space. Steady the lantern. When lost in past or future, name it softly. Feel your feet on the ground. Steady the lantern. When interacting, listen fully. Pause before speaking. Steady the lantern. When working, be with the one task. Sense the tools in your hands. Steady the lantern. When resting, truly rest. Be the silence between sounds. Steady the lantern. There is no grand finale to reach. Only this endless, gentle correction of course, back to steadiness, back to the clear circle of now. This is the path. It is walked with kindness, not grim determination. Let us sit in a final, shared silence. Let the lantern of your awareness be still. Let it rest on the simple fact of being here, breathing. No need to change anything. No need to understand. Just be the steady light, holding this moment, exactly as it is. Pause. As you return to the flow of your life, carry this steadiness with you. You will forget. The lantern will swing. This is human. When you notice, smile at the forgetfulness, and simply steady it again. That smile is compassion. That steadying is wisdom. The journey does not end here. It simply continues without a name, without a goal, in the ordinary magic of your daily life. May you walk with a steady light. May you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. Thank you for sharing this time at Monk's Temple. The temple has always been within you. You were never anywhere else.